Welcome to the Health System CIO Show. I'm your host, founder, and editor-in-chief, Anthony Guerra. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Dr. Ken Kawamoto, Chief Health AI Transformation Officer with the University of Utah Health. Dr. Kawamoto, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Anthony. Great to be here.
All right, looking forward to having a fun chat. Appreciate you taking the time. If you want to start off by telling me a little bit about your organization and your role, I believe it's a new role. You've been at the organization a while, but this is a new role, so we'll get into some details there.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm with University of Utah Health. We are a academic medical center serving a broad swath of the Mountain Midwest region, uh, uh, providing comprehensive care for our population and a lot of surrounding areas. My new role is as the Chief Health AI Transformation Officer, where I'm charged with helping to lead our organization to transform across our missions, primarily around clinical care and research, as well as education, leveraging AI.
All right, very good. What can you tell me about the genesis of the role? I mean, was
Yeah.
it something that you were involved in crafting, or was it sort of put together and then brought to you? And sort of, what do you think of this? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think confluence of various factors. As you mentioned, I've been at the University of Utah for a long time. I've been here for about 15 years, recruited in to have a dual role in both clinical operations on the health IT side and on the research innovation side. So I am a professor of biomedical informatics, vice chair for clinical AI and informatics in that department, which is one of the oldest departments of biomedical informatics in the world, and have been doing a lot of grant-funded research there. At the same time, for a long time, I've been the Associate Chief Medical Information Officer for our health system, really focused on clinical distance support and integrating digital health innovations using standards-based interoperability mechanisms like FHIR and Smart on FHIR CDS hooks. Um, this role kind of came to be because, ironically, I used to be a AI skeptic.
Oh,
No, we've been doing a lot of AI-based work for a number of years, but especially with the latest generation of AI technologies like the large language models, we had been doing a fair amount of work, experimentation, testing of it. With that and underlying models like the transformer model architecture, since these really came to the scene several years ago. And I'd say over that time, oftentimes we were finding, oh, it makes for a nice demo, or
hmm
it's easy to make a nice demo. But oftentimes when we were really trying things out, it just didn't quite work as well as we wanted to, or it would hallucinate, etc. What really changed, I'd say, is around fall of last year when the reasoning models from the large language models came in. We've noticed, and the benchmarks kind of show that there were pretty substantial improvements. And we certainly had an aha moment when we really looked at how things were performing in our testing and, where we're really trying to create things we are can safely deploy for our providers and patients and realized, oh gosh, the time is here. It has reached the point where we can make really effective tools that are quite safe, overcome a lot of the limitations that used to be there, and saw that. So, along with those lines, we were discussing with our pretty forward, I'd say, very forward-looking leadership at our institution, including on the IT side, of course, but also on the clinical side, and our chief executive officer, Dr. Bob Carter, and uh, realized, hey, this is something we should really step into. And that moved pretty fast at that point. And we spun up a health system innovation lab focused on AI to rapidly take ideas to prototype to see if it's worth pursuing further. We typically only spend at most 1 or 2 days to go from idea to prototype. We make a go, no go decision on, and set that up just in January. And shortly following suit of that, I got appointed to this new role.
Excellent. Very good. So I've seen some commentary, some writing, there's some thinking out there. There's this concept of
Hmm.
the way AI transformation should happen or needs to happen. And
Hmm.
sort of what people are talking about is adding AI to existing workflows is not sort of the holy grail of where we're trying to go here. The idea is that there have been transformations in the past where new technologies laid onto old structures have delayed reaping the benefits of those new technologies. Now, of course, not everything is a greenfield opportunity. We have existing organizations, workflows that have been around for hundreds of years, workflows that have developed organically and grown and interlinked over hundreds of years. Maybe if you were starting a new health system from scratch, you could build things up with these technologies in mind. So the idea that we have to lay them on top of existing workflows and structures, it's not like we can get away from that in a large way. Maybe we can in smaller ways. But I'd like your thoughts on that sort of dynamic that people talk about and just wherever you want to go with that.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, we live in the real world,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Where like you know, people might be excited about AI, but I mean, our providers, our care teams still need to provide care, right? Like their job is to provide patient care. It's not to, you know, implement AI. Um, so I think, yes, absolutely, integration with existing workflows, existing processes, existing structures is really important. I kind of think of it as like, AI, it's very exciting. I'm certainly excited about it, but it's kind of like, the internet. Like we would never think of it now as like our job is to figure out how to use the internet, or, our job is to figure out how to use computers or, phones. It's like our job is to provide better care for our patients in a way that serves them as optimally as possible and as effectively as possible. So I definitely would agree with that notion that, we obviously need to change some things about structures,
Right.
et cetera, but
Right.
I'm definitely not a big believer in like, hey, like we need to, rip out whole things that aren't necessarily broken. So as an example of that, I would say, for example, with governance, you know, probably the biggest sort of new thing we've done is we just needed faster timescales for moving forward and evaluating things. So a lot of our IT leadership, for example, got together and said, "Hey, let's just start meeting much more frequently." So we are meeting weekly with, top IT leadership, to just have the time to not wait for monthly governance meetings around these kinds of topics. And I would say that's an example where, we acknowledge the reality that um, there are existing structures and processes, and we may need to add some to it, but definitely uh, makes sense to leverage existing structures and processes and things that work well. On the clinical workflow end, yes, we definitely look to see how do we integrate with existing workflows. So a lot of what we do is integrated with the electronic health record system, with Epic in our case. And we use standards-based interoperability mechanisms like Smart on FHIR, for example, where it's been fortunate for us because our team historically has done a lot of work in that area. With our institutional leadership, founded a program called ReImagine EHR a number of years ago that has been really, really focused on standards-based interoperability, based on integration. We've gotten, I think, over $60 million in grant funding over the years to help accelerate that kind of work. And I've been pretty engaged in HL7, the standards development organization that has developed a lot of those standards, and served 2 terms on the U.S. Health IT Advisory Committee, where a lot of these kinds of policies and whatnot were being advised on. So I think that's been part of our kind of secret to success. Uh, it's still important to how to integrate with existing technologies, existing workflows, and we have immense expertise and experience with doing that. So it has been part of why we can do things like, hey, prototype EHR integrated workflow integrated approaches within a day or two because we are very experienced in that.
Yeah, so it's a great point. It's that balance between understanding we don't have that. It's easy for sort of someone to post about, hey, this isn't going to do it. This isn't good enough. We need to start from scratch. Well, that's easy to post. Obviously, to your
Mm,
point, that's not the real world. So that's one end of the spectrum that's completely blow everything up and start over. It's not realistic. At the other end of the spectrum is workflows are absolutely sacred, and nothing can be changed, which is also probably not accurate.
mhm.
So, in order to layer in, and I like to use the word infuse, in order
Yeah.
to infuse AI into the workflows and optimize them for AI, there must be some change,
Mhm,
and that's painful. Any change is
mhm.
painful and
Yeah.
difficult. I just wrote a column about this, especially
Mm,
when they're highly interlinked, right?
mhm,
Different workflows from different individuals and different departments. When we're changing, if we were changing one area on an island, so to speak, that's hard enough. But when they all interlink at different places and you're changing one, you break those linkages that have been developed over
mhm,
decades. So
mhm.
this is the hard work. And you mentioned meeting more often. So that's probably one part of how to do this successfully. It's the governance, it's getting the right people at the table, it's having some sort of deliberation about what we're going to change rather than just changing things willy-nilly, but also balancing that with wanting to move forward so we don't just discuss things for weeks and weeks and
Mm,
weeks and table everything and nothing
mhm.
gets done.
Yeah.
This is all the art of what you're trying to do. Tell me a little bit more about how to do that art successfully.
Yeah, I think a key part of it is just talking to people and listening, right? So, seeing where folks' concerns are and really trying to make sure we come up with an approach that everyone feels comfortable with. Um, Key to a lot of this is also piloting. So, for much of what we do, we focus on getting real experience with folks who understand that they're undergoing pilot and are giving us real-time feedback. So, let me just give you one example. One of the key areas we're focused on now is we're building a tool called AI Workbench, a standards-based approach we're building into our electronic health record, where we realized quite early on, as we started this, that there are just so many use cases, ideas from the front lines of how we can improve things. But the traditional approach of building custom solutions is if we built a custom solution for each one, we would just quickly run out of bandwidth. So we saw common patterns, and one of the common patterns we saw was something that could be addressed by this tool. So what we've developed is a tool integrated with Epic using the EHR using standards-based interoperability mechanisms, so it could work with any electronic health record that allows end users to have data that are pulled in using these standards-based methods from the medical record and analyzed using custom prompts of however they want things analyzed. So what would have been previously building and going through the governance of creating individual tools is now creating a tool for creating tools. And what that's allowed us to do is very quickly see what the experience is, and through this beta testing, identify, well, where are the real life errors that tend to occur, right? And errors in terms of like misusage of the tools or not quite understanding how the tools work and rapidly figure out how to address them, and then to combine them with very rigorous testing and safety evaluations, where we are creating hundreds of validation cases based on actual utilizations of, where do things work. And what we generally found is these tools will oftentimes very commonly find issues that the physician had missed. Um, so overall, definitely provides an improvement, but that there are areas for potential improvement. So we are rapidly making those changes, communicating constantly with their beta users and preparing things so that we have a very safe, very effective tool that we can release. So kind of meets the best of both worlds, where we're not slowed down by being in analysis paralysis forever, but also doing it in a very controlled, piloted environment so that but when we are ready to release more widely, it has been very, very thoroughly tested.
Very good. Any more thoughts around doing, you mentioned the importance of pilots.
Yeah.
How do you get a pilot wrong and what are some elements to get it right?
Yeah, so uh, things that could make a pilot go wrong. So I think one is to always perpetually stay in pilot because, that doesn't actually impact things. Um, but I think things to make it go right, I think, is to have really engaged people who can give constant feedback and help us improve and understand that we are currently in pilot. But um, I think I think we have a pretty good process down, and we have such engaged users here. I think part of it is because with a lot of these technologies, we're getting to the realm where we can also like really solve a lot of issues that users are having, especially things that take inordinate amounts of their time. So we're oftentimes finding 10x plus time savings for the tasks that they're currently having to do while increasing efficacy, effectiveness, and safety. So it's really a win-win. It's I've been working in clinical distance support for decades now, and that historically felt like you're trying to have people take medicine where everyone knows it's good, but it just kind of adds a little bit more time, et cetera. This kind of feels like we're just like, giving people whatever their favorite snack is, whether it's ice cream or whatnot. It's, just working with them to make sure that ice cream actually has 0 calories and is super nutritious.
Yeah, and when you talk about that change in dynamic, is that really because of generative AI and the LLM capabilities? I mean, that to me, when you talk about getting your users to really embrace things and to quickly identify workflows that are difficult for them, LLMs seem to be able to handle so much of that stuff and
Hmm.
quickly, right? Quickly,
Yes.
like I do the, well, tell me about your workflow. Well, I have to do this thing, or I have to take this data and reformat it, or I have to go through
Hmm.
and do, and it's time consuming and
Yeah.
manual and onerous. And it's like you can write a prompt in 10 minutes and
Yeah.
like, oh, look at that. And then people, their minds are blown.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. Large language models at the current generation, I think, are highly transformative for all those reasons. The underlying transformer architecture also has changed things quite a bit for the predictive modeling, where just to give you an example, we, for example, look to create predictions for things like, inpatient mortality, length of stay, um, those kinds of issues. And previously, that would have been a huge job, but we were able to do in about 2 days, build predictive models that even superseded some benchmarks we saw in places like Nature from start to finish. From, hey, let's use our 10 years worth of our patients' data and see if we can predict this, to having something that was wildly strong in terms of predictive performance with 2 days worth of work. And, you know, it's something unthinkable because I used to do this kind of work using traditional predictive analytics techniques. And it would have, I mean, we published on this. I mean, they were like 2-year postdoctoral fellowship projects. And
Yeah.
now it's literally like, hey, we actually did this while we were at our American Medical Informatics Association annual symposium. So it was like, while we were at a conference, we decided to do it. And by the end of the conference, we had the results. It was kind of crazy.
That's mind blowing. I mean that's why we're in, a revolution being fueled by technology that we haven't seen since the advent of the internet. I mean, this is staggering what's happening, and the pace of change is only going to continue to accelerate. The whatever you are trying to do, whenever you hit the frontier of its ability, and I don't know if you've had experience with this where you say, it's just not working. It's not working
Hmm.
right now. Well, that
Hmm.
doesn't mean 2 weeks from now the next model isn't going to be able to do it.
That
So
is absolutely true. So
fascinating.
true.
Your thoughts?
No, it is absolutely wild how fast this uh, moves. And even as an academic and a professor, like papers are almost meaningless now to some extent because they're so outdated by the time they come out. I mean, literally now, our source of the knowledge of what's going on is, Twitter, X, and Reddit, which is crazy, but that is where we find out what's going on, which again, like, it also calls into question the traditional academic publishing model when the pace of change is like, 2 months ago stuff is all news.
You're 100% right. If there are people that I follow that are posting on LinkedIn good content, and they're short updates, but they're essentially posting 3 times a day, four
Hmm.
times a day, little
Hmm.
very important, useful snippets. It makes the idea of a book seem like it's from the 16th century. I think
Hmm.
of Gutenberg and his Bible. I mean, you think of when you read about things in history, different events, transatlantic things around the American Revolution, and
Hmm.
you hear about letters being received 2 months after a peace treaty was signed when they're still at
Hmm.
war on the other continent. And then you think about what's going on now. It's just, it's wild. It's pretty wild. To stay
It
up on
is.
this stuff, let's talk about that. I mean,
Yeah.
you're doing your best. We're all doing our best, but it's drinking from a fire hose. And you absolutely have to be plugged in real time to these updates. And
Hmm.
um, I don't know. Any other thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a completely different model. I do think yeah, we just have to think differently. Like it would have been laughable before if it was like, oh yeah, look at Reddit for what you should be paying attention to. But and even now, like even when you look in those sources, oftentimes like a new model will come out, like nobody, has done anything to benchmark for things we want. So we'll do things like we'll just run, for example, a new model through OpenAI's HealthBench benchmark. Nobody's published on it, nobody's even posted on it, but we're like, okay, we'll just run through their 5,000 use cases with this model, see how it performs. So it's getting to the point where it's very interesting, like just such a different way of going about things. And like you say, like, yeah, there are a lot of fields where books are great, but it also seems like, things are moving so fast. It's fairly common where I'll be like peer reviewing a manuscript and my comment is along the lines of, this is great, but the models that they evaluated, this is obsolete and not relevant now. So it's really not relevant because like nobody would like who was doing this for real would even consider using these models today.
Yeah, I just somebody had mentioned a book in a post they put up, and I asked one of the LLMs. I said, I put the book in. I said, "Is this book worth my time to read?" It was something about
Hmm.
change and the Industrial Revolution, or something having to do with relating it to AI. Was the point of the post, but the book they referenced was a little older, and the AI was like, "Yeah, this is kind of dated. This book."
No, it
It
is
just,
it is fascinating.
it made me laugh. I'm like, okay. They're like, yeah, a lot of they're like, this is pre-AI, which is only has to be before what, 2004, for it to be sort of pre really whenever the GPT main model
Hmm.
came out. I don't know if that was 2004 or a little earlier, but anything pre that is going to have none of this stuff in it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's it is really wild. Really exciting. I mean, but yeah, it's having been an informaticist now for a few decades and the amount of effort it took to do a lot of things, to some extent, it's scary because things that previously would have taken us and our team such a long time to do or would have been even impossible, now it's trivial. So, just to provide examples, for example, for ambient listening, one of the ideas we had was, hey, like maybe we can listen to our patients during rounds. That's something some of our acute care units were interested in. So use secure approaches, got patient consent, recorded to see like, hey, could we, have a ambient capability here? We had good results in half a day. Like literally, like recording that afternoon, we're like, oh yeah, this looks good. To think that technologies now that were so disruptive and things like ambient documentation and now with the technologies available, it's trivial for a lot of use cases. It is just flabbergasting. Just the capabilities that are available now that completely unthinkable until really, really recently.
Yeah, and it's funny if you also add the thought onto that of what we're amazed at today, 2 years from now will seem ridiculous and primitive,
Hmm.
right? The stuff we're
Yes.
talking, what your
Yes.
examples you're giving right now, people are going to be like, "Oh my God, listen to this guy." right? Two
Yeah,
years
like
from now,
obviously we'd be listening to what's going on and like why would we not do that? Why would we not like identify all the evidence-based guidance that this patient should be considered for and prioritize that? Like it's actually doable now, and I've been working on these things for years. It was so hard
yeah,
to create evidence-based, guideline-based content that stayed up to date, would, updates to the clinical knowledge and changes to the semantic structure of data, updates to ICD codes. Like we had problems where it's like, oh, ICD introduced a new chronic kidney disease subtype, and if you don't catch it, your logic breaks. And it's
yeah.
like trivial now because you don't even have to think about those kinds of things. It's wild.
So, to be practical here, I think one of the takeaways you tell me of what we're saying is if you're going to be leading in this area, you have to be deeply enmeshed in the work. You have to be reading those Reddit posts, the X posts. You have to find your sources, your go-to sources, and they can be a combination of traditional publications and people, individuals, academics. You have to have that mix. You have to be plugged into a number of places. You have to be drinking from the fire hose, and you also have to be experimenting on a daily basis,
Mhm.
pushing the envelope in a safe way, in a safe sandbox. But you have to, and this is the best people that I see, the best people that I follow are daily. I use the word playing. They're
Mhm.
playing with this stuff daily, and they're
Yeah.
putting out, like you said, not peer reviewed. They're putting out short posts of here's what I tried, and here's what worked, and here's what didn't. I feel like those, here's what I built. A lot of these
Mhm.
people are builders. They try it.
Mhm.
They're using OpenClaw or whatever, and their personal life, and they're like, "Oh, look what I just had it do." And I
Mhm.
feel like that's a key to being successful: is you've got to be playing. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely how we work. We do it in very safe environments. So, for example, almost all the work we do right now with this kind of work is we do it all on premise on our own AI servers. So our patient's data never leaves their secure data center, for example. But yes, that's exactly what we're doing. We have validation cases of what we expect should be the case based on working with expert physicians, for example. This is what it should be. And we literally try out all sorts of different ideas, approaches to see what actually works, has the best performance characteristics, both in terms of safety, effectiveness, and speed. And we empirically see this is what works. And I think what we have that's very cool is that we're building an infrastructure. So when there are new approaches that come out, we can in the background do batch regression testing. Ideally, we're going to get into the thousands of cases where we can say, this is how this new techniques would improve our performance. And while for ideal, what we're aiming for is while having no what we would consider potential safety issues that might arise. So it is, you know, it's great to have academic discussions and theoretical musings about things, but like we're very much a let's like take ideas that people ourselves, others are throwing around, and let's actually test it to see what works best.
I also feel like I see a lot of these individuals using it in their personal lives as also a testing ground and a
Mhm.
playground. Do you see that? Do you think
Yeah,
that's important?
I think it's true. I mean, in a sense, it's like we gotta eat our own dog food,
Yeah.
right? So it's I would say it is our general philosophy that we should never do anything that we don't think, if we were in our patient's shoes, would be the right thing. So, like testing things out is really important. So, I'll just give an example. Um, Maybe like a week and a half ago, my son in college, like, he was having symptoms. Student health was like, oh, you don't need to come in. And my wife was like, you need to go to urgent care now. And we have a prototype tool we haven't released yet for patient triage. It's kind of basically goes through and triage, but we haven't released it, though we've tested it. It looks very promising. So I was like, hey son, okay, to break the argument between my wife and myself, please use our tool. Here's the login, right? And it turned out it said, oh, you have some red flag symptoms. And he went to the ED and they actually found things that he's fine now, but like
Good.
they thought was serious enough. He was there for like, 8, 9 hours getting a workup. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, you know what? Like in general, my belief is, we need to try it and we shouldn't be, as technologists, as health system leaders, we should not be releasing anything that we truly wouldn't be comfortable our own family using to guide their care. And you know, I, again, I was a skeptic, but like, gosh, like we have gotten to the point where like I would much rather for my own care that these tools that we're developing and safely deploying after a lot of testing get used than not. Because honestly, like, if we had, right, like these tools are pretty darn amazing as
Yeah.
a supplement to what we as hardworking and well trained are, we are all human after all.
That's a great story. Was your wife on board with agreeing to whatever your tool said? Or if they said no, you're good, your wife,
I th
I
yeah,
think she would have kept arguing.
I think so, but
Oh, she would have been all right.
yeah, but I mean, it's again, it was like, I mean, I don't practice, but I went to med school and everything, and like when he was talking about, it, I was thinking like, that doesn't sound so concerning, but like, the AI system was appropriately prompting for follow-up information and was like, oh my gosh, like you have some red flags in your symptomology,
Well,
and
I'm glad he's
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's great. Um, let's talk a little bit about you're working with a lot of people. You're trying to move things forward, in a reasonable, responsible way. When you do encounter, I'm picturing a lot of people. This is difficult work, and some folks are not up for change. Change is hard. Some people don't like change. Have you encountered, or can you tell any stories about encountering resistance that you felt was not warranted? Could have just been on the individual level. Could have been someone who's maybe towards the tail end of their career and was just like, you know what, I'm just not up for this. I've got a little bit longer to go, and I want to just keep doing what I've been doing. Do you see a lot of that, or what are your thoughts around, you know, we
Mhm.
need this workforce to be pliable and to be open to change and to be curious about these tools. And if we encounter pockets or individuals that are not interested, not flexible, that's a problem. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say yes. I think in almost all cases, everyone's coming from, a position of legitimate concern, right? And genuine concern over things. I think so I'll give examples. So one would be where there's a desire for perfection in these AI tools, and it's hard to reach perfection. So for example, perfect performance characteristics. So if it was the equivalent of a predictive model that is never off, always has 100% sensitivity specificity. And as you know, like there's nothing in medicine that's 100% sensitivity specificity for I don't know of a single thing that has that kind of characteristics. And I think uh, the main issue is if we've been in healthcare, we know for a fact that like uh, in general, it takes 17 years for clinical evidence-based guidance that is proven to be the right way to care for patients to reach general care. On average, patients receive about half of the recommended care in the US, for example. Um, so we're working on a baseline of trying to improve what everyone's working hard, but it's not perfect. So I think I kind of view it as uh, we have to do what's in the best interest of the patient. And that may mean, right, like weighing things in an imperfect set of information where like this decision isn't like, hey, we have a perfect solution that never could possibly have any issues, right, in terms of like its performance characteristics, its sensitivity specificity characteristics, but uh, uh, it, it's it's for those of us in the clinical healthcare space, we know there's a lot of things that can help, even if it's not absolutely perfect. So I think that's one common sort of part I see. And again, I kind of view it from my patient perspective. Like, would I rather have tools that are going to be additional safeguards for my physician to consider, or would I rather not?
Yeah, right.
I would much rather have additional safeguards for them to consider. And then I think the other part is the notion and concern of, hey, is this going to replace me and my job? Um, I think it's less of an issue in healthcare because everyone in healthcare knows, like, oh my gosh, like there's such a tidal wave of patient care needs, backlogs of patients trying to see us that like it's hard to imagine how that could be the case. But I think it is a legitimate concern. The main issue really is like there's so much to be done. It's really just a question of like, do we reallocate where we spend our effort to things where we're needed more? But again, I see where folks are coming from, and I think everyone is very comes from a place of legitimate, validated concerns. I think just thinking, the underlying thought has to be what's best for the patient, right? Like we're in healthcare for a reason, so the guiding principle really has to be like what's best, what's in our patient's best interest.
Very good. I just want to touch on one or two more important things, and then I'm going to let you go. Your position, the new position that was created, your current position, reports up to the Chief Innovation Officer,
Hmm.
Dr. Hodeling,
Yep.
as opposed to reporting up to Donna Roach.
Hmm.
Which was the CIO position. I think she's
Hmm.
digital as well. I
Hmm.
forget her
That's right.
she
She is.
changed her title. That's an intentional decision. Um, Tell me about it.
Hmm.
What's the thought process there? There's many titles similar to yours.
Hmm.
There's all sorts of C-suite titles now where they divvy up
Hmm.
technology, infrastructure,
Hmm.
AI, data, security in all kinds of different ways. Tell me about the thoughts of why you have that going up to innovation instead of up to
Yeah.
sort of IT.
Yeah, and to be clear, my direct report is Jim, but I dotted to Donna as well.
Okay.
I kind of view it as I just get as many really effective, I guess, bosses, if you will, mentors to and supporters. Um, you know, so AI, I think, is just a tool. We may not even think specifically in terms of AI in the future, right? It's like, do we really think about the internet as a, it's just part of what we do, right? So, in my view, and practically speaking, I seek the support of all the stakeholders, including, of course, the leaders at our institution, like Jim, like Donna, like Vivek, our Chief Medical Information Officer. Um, I think AI kind of work cannot succeed unless everyone has a vested interest and see it as supporting their mission. So I think it's really fortunate that because AI obviously has a, a chief information officer, digital information officer type of scope in it. So does the CMIO, et cetera. So having natural groups, including, of course, Jim, my direct reporting line here, I think is amazing because it means there are a lot of invested people who can help move this vision forward.
Yeah, and it makes me think about data, and that data is the foundation of all of this. These
It is
tools, these amazing tools, right, need good data to give you the great outputs that they can. Those
absolutely.
algorithms acting on bad data are not going to get you much.
Hmm.
So that has elevated that discipline like phenomenally. What are your
Yes.
thoughts around that? And how do you work? How do you
Yeah.
make sure you're working well with the, I assume you have a chief data officer. I don't know if that's exact position, but whoever's in charge of data
Yeah.
at your organization should have a seat at that sort of
Yep.
leadership table.
Yeah. So, for example, our weekly governance includes, for example, Reed Barney, who's in charge of our data warehouse and all the C-level leadership that the data reports to. Yeah, I think data is absolutely at the key. I personally do a lot of the data engineering for our team and have I'm quite focused and adept at that as well. Um, Interesting you mention it because for a lot of our AI work, the biggest failure points we see is when the right data is not brought into the context and, how to bring in the right amount of which context. So, um, actually, most of what we call AI work is actually data engineering and data context work. How do we identify the right data, have it pulled in rapidly, and serve the appropriate data? Because almost all the failure points that we see from a practical perspective is the right data not being processed. And so yes, as a matter of fact, that is that is where a lot of our focus is. And how to do that is it's 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 also where it really helps us that we have been very heavily in the data and standards-based interoperability and data management part of the health IT ecosystem for so long. But that is where the differentiation we see is, and that's where we're focused to a large extent.
Excellent. Well, that's about all we had time for today, Dr. Kawamoto. Do you have any final thought, best piece of advice you can give for people trying to move down this road, maybe having a little bit of struggles, a little bit of trouble? What's your best piece of advice?
Yeah, I guess the best piece of advice I would give is to try to avoid prior conceptions of things because this field is moving so fast. To actually just try things, especially if you've used things in the past and thought, this doesn't quite look up to snuff, because I believe the same thing. But we kept trying things and saying like, I wonder if this new version makes a difference, and oh boy, the field has changed. So especially if your conception is say from a year ago or maybe even like 6 months ago, like I would just not let your conception from yesterday keep you from thinking about, hey, maybe it's different today because we have often found it is in fact different today.
Well, that's wonderful, Dr. Kawamoto. I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been a real pleasure, and I hope we can catch up with you down the road.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Anthony.
Take care.